So it's a toggle situation. All right, there we go. Live on X, waiting on YouTube. Let's kick it off. Dave, you've got your Yeti, and I hope you also have a glass of wine. No ice in the Yeti today, I hope.
No, there's plenty of ice in the Yeti. There's always ice in the Yeti.
I know, but then
that's why it's a Yeti, because the ice doesn't melt.
Oh my God. Dave puts ice
I put ice in it in the morning and it doesn't melt all day. I refill it like 5 times.
We're not getting paid by Yeti for this.
You have to stay hydrated. If we were getting paid by anyone, it would be Nebbiolo. It would be Piemonte. It would be Barbaresco.
It would be the consortium in Barolo. I mean, yeah. Okay, guys. Welcome back. It is Wine Wednesday. We are slowly getting our shit together with this stream situation. We're live on X. So everyone on X, hi. Here we go. Dave's still not on YouTube, but we'll upload it to YouTube later, I guess. It's weird. It's broken.
Is it?
Yeah.
Maybe you need to do the RTMP. Does anyone know what RTMP means?
Custom RTMP.
I don't even know what RTMP means.
We usually have the custom RTMP, but we have integrations with YouTube and X and
oh no, you can't use the integration with YouTube. You have to do the RTMP with YouTube.
So then that's what it is. All right. Okay. So do we want to fix it and start again, or do we just want to upload this later? I would just upload this on YouTube.
Fine.
We're going to upload
I'm fine with it
later. Okay. So the reason that I was grilling Dave for the ice in the Yeti, we'll just quickly cover that, is because his audio never works when we do all of our webinars and podcasts. His audio never works. He'll be saying something, or it's when I'm talking, because then you're drinking from the Yeti and you can never hear anything I say. And I feel like it's actually a tactic.
It might be.
On that note, welcome back to Wine Wednesday, guys. Today's theme is Nebbiolo. So Dave's got a Nebbiolo. I've got a Nebbiolo. What the hell is Nebbiolo? You might not have heard of it, but you would probably have heard of Barolo. So Nebbiolo is the grape that makes Barolo, one of the most ageable, famous investment grade wines as well, but definitely one of the most ageable grapes out there. It is super high in acid, one of the highest tannin wines out there. And it's funny because it's really light in color. So we'll get into that. We'll do a little deep dive. But first, who are you, David Garrett?
Hi. I'm David Garrett, and had I listened to my better angels, I would be a winemaker. Yeah, that. No, mostly I would be a winemaker in Argentina or maybe in Spain, and I'd be out in the field. Probably, if I was in Argentina, then I'd be harvesting right now, and in Spain, I'd probably be pruning. And either one of those things is better than watching the market today.
Fair.
I probably should have done that. Way
to tie yourself to the negative world today, Dave. You're better than that.
Yeah.
We need you here, and we'll get into why. We'll get into what. Look, Dave, we really need you here. So, all right.
Is there a better day to be drinking Italian wine? I don't think so.
There's not.
Everybody. Now, that said, everyone, in the States, you should be careful with your Italian wine, because who knows if you're ever going to see it again.
Oh, God, that is so mean.
It's cheaper for us.
I know. So we're in Europe, guys, and maybe
swimming in Italian wine and French.
So much. Much too much champagne over here, guys. It's terrible. Okay, that's mean. And I'm your host, Jana. I am a certified somm and a wine geek and a co-founder of dVIN Labs. Fun fact about me, been deported from an entire continent and a country. So we'll get into that on over another bottle of wine. Dave, what are you drinking?
So I, last night, I knew we were going to do this today, and my wife was cooking yesterday, and she was making a bolognese, and she said, what should I open to to like make, because we always put wine in the bolognese. She said, what wine should I use? And I was like, ooh, well, we should open a Nebbiolo and you should use that. And then I can have it open for 24 hours so that it's going to be nice and open so I can drink it. Because Nebbiolo famously is, pretty close. Like typically if you're going to drink a good Barolo or a good Barbaresco, you want to open it a couple hours before, maybe even decant it. I like to open it 24 hours before, and maybe just kind of put the cork in, and maybe put it in the fridge and put the cork in, and like let it aerate for a little bit, so that it opens up. But what I opened was this, which no one's ever heard of, but it's a Lenga Nebbiolo, and the reason that I like it is it's so one of the cool things about Argentina, and actually in Spain as well, they do it less in Spain now. But in Argentina, a lot of times there are these collectives where there's a big winery and all the grape growers from everywhere, in that particular region, they'll bring in either all of their grapes or all of their excess grapes. They'll sell it to a socio, like a community, or a co-op. It's actually more like a co-op. So they'll sell all their grapes to the co-op. The co-op will make the wine, and then they will either distribute the wine or they'll sell the wine and distribute the profits to all the grape growers. So it's like a real, true co-op, and that's been going on for a long time. Here in Spain, if you've ever been to Barcelona, or even Madrid. But if you go to certainly in Barcelona, you'll go to like a wine shop or a bar, and you'll be able to order wine by the glass. But there's also be these big kegs where like there's a giant 50-liter wooden keg that you can literally, there's a spigot on it, and you can get the wine out of it. And those are all wines that are created by these co-ops. And that's always really fun. They're typically super fresh. They're not, investment grade wines. They're not super expensive wines, but they're usually really fun to drink. And like the here in Spain, in Barcelona, when you go, you'll take what's called a Dama Juana, which is like Aunt Juana, Aunt Joan, Dama Juana. So you'll take a big, like a 5-liter jug, and you'll take it and you'll open the cap and you'll fill up your 5-liter jug, and that's what you'll take home, and that's what you'll drink for the week. And
like
so yeah, so that's all really fun. But the reason that I'm telling you that is, when I was driving through on my way home from Tuscany last summer, we were driving through, and we stopped at one of these co-ops in Piemonte, and loved the co-op. It was super fun, like beautiful. You can look it up. There's a lot of stories about it. But I went in and I just bought a bunch of wine from the co-op, and they didn't sell it in Damajuanas. I mean, this isn't a cheap wine, but it is made by the co-op. So it's made by grapes from all over Piemonte. And so I really like it. It's a really fun wine to drink with, like meaty pasta. And so that's why we opened it last night. And that's why I'm drinking it today.
Nice. Okay, I was gonna say first when you were like, and then we wanted to put it in the sauce. I was like, wait a minute, what are you putting in the sauce? I thought because Dave tends to be. I always say this. We have this like great banter, right, Dave? But like I always say that Dave's a wine snob, and usually
A little bit.
true. And so it's really nice to know that you got your feet on the ground today. Okay, it's really good. Thanks for that. Thanks, Dave. So I'm drinking a Chiretto Barolo. It's 2017 vintage.
Ooh.
Pretty nice. Yeah, nice bottle.
Very nice.
I'm on the last glass. It's true what Dave says. You can open a bottle of Barolo and just go through it through the week and just drink it like little by little. And it's really interesting how it changes day by day. I would say you can't open a bottle of wine and just take the cork out and expect it to like really change. There's not enough oxygen hitting the wine. So you got to I'm not a fan of decanters. I'm really not a fan of decanters, but if there's enough oxygen in the bottle, like because Dave put it in the pasta sauce, so then there would be more room for the wine to actually be like getting some contact with oxygen and actually opening up and evolving. So, but you can't just open your bottle of Nebbiolo, which is Barolo or Barbaresco, right? And leave it on the counter with the cork out and be like, it's going to be great in 3 hours. Don't believe that. When a som does that to you at a restaurant, nuh-uh, it's not doing anything. So, anyways, what I think is a really interesting tie into today's market, since Dave's been a pessimist since we got on here about the markets being very
No.
volatile and shit. It's true. But let's talk about, since I feel kind of like we're at war in the markets, right? So let's talk about the Barolo wars. So back in the 80s, Barolo had like a full-on feud. And this was like the winemakers in Barolo.
Is this a Mussolini story? No.
Okay. You know what? You had your moment. You just drink from the Yeti, all right? No ice.
Zip it.
No ice. So there was like this full-on feud in Barolo, and it was actually it was crazy. Like, you know, it wasn't a war with weapons. It was a war on wine, and it was winemakers against winemakers in Barolo. And it was basically like the traditionalists versus the modernists. And so what was happening was Barolo was very much a niche, because these wines, they're so tannic that it really takes them a long time. Like we were saying in the bottle, it really takes them a long time to develop and age and actually be wines that you have a good time drinking. So before they even reach the bottle, there's a long process, that traditionally, a really long process that was going on in the cellar. And they were traditionally aging these wines in big oak barrels. And I think it was originally Slovenian oak, and it was called botti, these big oak barrels. And then the modernists kind of came in, and it was actually like, it was generations, right? So sometimes it was like father and son or father and daughter, and they were like battling each other about how to make the wines, because traditionally the wines were just so niche and hard to understand, because they were so tight and closed up that it was really hard for Barolo to get new people interested and to understand the wines and the potential of the wines. You had to wait forever to be able to really enjoy them. And so the modernists came in with this idea of using smaller oak and French barrels and longer maceration times. So that was making the wines more approachable faster. And so I really think that, fast forwarding to today, as I was saying, and as Dave was saying, you know, the markets are terrible. We're in a new kind of war. There's tariffs, and we're really facing a volatile market, all of the markets. And so I think it's really interesting to kind of thread this all together with how dVIN is actually kind of taking wine into the future. So are we the modernists of the Barolo wars in this story? And Dave, I want to know what you think about that comparison.
Well, so I think it's interesting. I will say that there was the one story I remember, and I'm sure I don't have the details about this right, was that somebody, one of the two sides, actually broke in and used an axe and cut open, like, and spilled hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of wine.
What?
Yeah, I remember in the Nebbiolo Wars, there was the
Barolo wars.
Piemonte Wars. We'll have to look this up. We'll look it up and put it in the show notes. But there was definitely some sabotage. Like it got bloody, certainly, but more importantly, there was some sabotage, and like I think that one of the side, like kind of at the climax of the war, somebody came in and spilled a bunch of wine, or they opened something, they left the vats open. There was some story that I remember that was like it ended up being a really big, you know, financial issue. So but anyway, that's you know, every good war needs to have some bloodletting, and maybe that's what's happening today, or maybe that's what happened yesterday or over the weekend. But yeah, I guess so. I guess that's probably right, Jana. I guess we're the future.
I mean,
I just hope no one sabotages us.
I think, was it in so Dave posted this really great long form article on Monday. If anyone is, so we've been posting it all over social, and it's a really good piece. And Dave tends to write a very long form, and it's long form for our content, but it's very digestible. And I suggest anyone and everyone who's watching this go out and read it. I think it's like a 6-minute read. That is very tame for you, Dave. And it's
Is
a
long
really good
form
read.
Gen Z for boring?
I would like we can talk about
Okay,
this
sure.
and email another day, but maybe not live on X because that's neither here nor
Yeah,
there.
fair.
Okay.
Fair.
So all right. Markets are wobbly and terrible and shitty. But what about like how does wine play into this? You wrote this article about the wine asset class being this $1 trillion sleeping giant and like why wine now more than ever belongs in everybody's investment portfolio. And that, we're the future.
Yeah.
Why does tokenizing wine make so much sense today?
So here's a cool thing about wine. Um, so wine has over the last 100 years has certainly had peaks and valleys. It's always been um, it's always kind of had um, a kind of interesting relationship with investors, mostly because only very, very wealthy investors have had the access to be able to invest in investment grade wine. Um, but there's something kind of interesting to know about wine, right? Like there are some interesting facts that are just facts. One is as wine gets closer to the optimal drinking window, it gets more valuable, right? Like it's just that simple. It gets more valuable. So like that's an important thing. The you know number go up is sort of a given for wine. And actually that window is somewhat knowable and somewhat predictable. So you can actually see that the number's going to go up, right? You know that as the wine gets closer to the drinking window, when it's actually the optimal time to be consuming it, it's going to get more valuable. If you've got two bottles in front of you and one of them you can drink today and one of them you have to wait a year, the one that you can drink today is gonna go for more money, all else being equal. So that's one important thing. A second important thing is it is um, organically deflationary, meaning every time you open a bottle, there's one less, right? And when there's one less, that means that all of the rest of them are worth more, assuming that demand is the same. And especially as you're progressing towards a drinking window, as there are fewer bottles and more people that want to drink them, then that's just the definition of deflation. So again, number go up. And then there's a third piece to it, which is more of the macro, which is kind of there's a third and a fourth piece, right? Third piece is um, you know the more millionaires there are in the world, the more people are interested in buying and consuming great wine. That has just been a fact for 100 years, probably more like 200 years. But as you get more and more wealthy people, um, the the demand for investment grade wine increases, especially considering the fact that there is a limited number of wine that can be produced,
Forced
right?
scarcity.
Forced scarcity, because that the amount of wine that can be produced is limited usually by geography, right? I only have so many hectares, I can only plant so many grapes, but also by local regulatory fiat, right? There's a government that says, or there's an organization that says, hey, you can only grow this many grapes per hectare, and the area, Bordeaux is only so big, Burgundy is only so big, Champagne is only so big.
Yeah.
So more millionaires, same amount of wine, price go up. And then the third thing, or the fourth thing, is climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And as the climate changes, right now there's maybe 6 places in the world that make investment grade wine, maybe 7. Champagne, Burgundy,
Bordeaux,
Bordeaux, the
Napa,
Rhone,
Piedmont.
Barolo, yeah, Piemonte, Napa,
Hmm.
Tuscany, maybe. Like not not very many
Coonawarra.
places.
Coonawarra. Well,
Coonawarra. Apparently, somebody makes something in Germany that's tastes good. I don't know. Somebody said that once. Port. So,
yeah.
the number of places you can count them on two hands. And those places are all really, really close to the 33rd parallel. Like
Yeah.
really close. Like maybe a little bit higher than the 33rd, maybe a little bit lower, but like they're all in this kind of band. Everybody's been
And then there's Chakra
talk,
in Patagonia.
yeah, fair. But everybody's been talking about uh they talk about in the United States, they're talking about tariffs, they talk about coffee. And they say, here is where you can grow coffee, and here's where the United States is, and there's no overlap. So every coffee bean in the United States has to be imported, which means that like every coffee bean is subject to an import tax. Which is a lot of people. That's one way that people make that argument. Well, the same thing is true with wine. There's like these bands where those are the only places where investment grade wine can be made or great wine can be made right now. But as the climate changes, like that's going to change. And for example, this is why we're making wine in Bhutan.
Hmm.
But when you think about 2 years ago, Burgundy, because of uh, weather conditions, really, Burgundy ended up they produced what 20% of their normal annual production. So there's never going to be any more. There's only going to be less. So more millionaires, less wine, price go up. Like it's just kind of that simple. And by making the asset class available to everybody, we think that adds a fifth element, which is just a lot more liquidity in the market. So I'm going to stop talking and start drinking because it's
Yeah.
5:30.
I mean, it's 5:30. But actually, usually we really geek out about wine for like half of this. So we are getting there. We need to like dive in. But what do you think about like trust in traditional systems and how much is that fading and like why how if wine is so I know I'm stacking up questions on you now, Dave, but you're good with the rule of three. So if you can keep up, be great. Um, but um, so trust in traditional systems is fading. Okay, we know that is not a question. Um, how does tokenizing wine work? Like, how are we? What are we solving? Because we talk about our. It's been 3 weeks now that we've been talking about our partnership with Liquid Mercury and building a global order book for wine, and all of these things are starting to come together. But how does that really work? And how is
So I was talking to somebody yesterday. We were talking to a kind of household name negotiant, household name in some households, in our households. But we were talking to a big wine producer yesterday, and we're kind of talking about how it works. And the way that I explained it was actually really simple. Like, um, with the assets that you have, the assets that you own, one of the major asset that you own is your house, right? Your house or your condo or whatever, real estate. And the reason that's an asset is because you have a deed of ownership. Um, and I know this. It's Wednesday and I'm drinking wine, so I'm going to get a little esoteric. But I know this because I spent a bunch of time in Ecuador with a Peruvian economist, like 30 years ago, and he he just happened to live in the house where I was renting a room, and I spent a lot of time talking to him about economics. And he was telling me that the difference between Ecuador and Peru, and the reason that Ecuador had a real economy in the 90s and Peru didn't, was because Ecuador had had um, had figured out real estate where you could actually own a house, and there was a piece of paper that said that you owned a house. Whereas in Peru, your house was kind of owned, and then when if you died, then your kids got it, and then their kids got it, and it was just kind of passed down that way. There was no real claim on real estate. There was no deed of ownership. And I was like, well, okay, but why is that so important? And he was like, well, here's why. Because if there's no deed of ownership, then how can you insure something?
Right.
How can you get insurance? And if there's no deed of ownership, how can you borrow against it? You can't borrow against something unless you can prove that you own it. And it just creates so many things that. And Peru, a couple of years later, and this guy that I hung out with in Ecuador, he was helping to build that system in Peru in the 90s. And Peru went through their entire economy changed over the course of 5 or 10 years because they instituted this, this way to perfect ownership of real estate. So how does that relate back to wine? Well, so wine, this bottle is a possession, right? And that possession can just fly all over the world, and whoever happens to be holding it is the owner of that bottle of wine. But if we can turn it into an asset, if we can create a deed of ownership for that bottle, then it becomes an asset. And then you can do things like insure it, you can borrow against it, you can track not only who owns it and those transactions, but you can track who's holding it, who's possessed, who has custody of it. And that just provides all of this. It just changes the whole wine industry from being this, kind of low level commodity to being a real industry all over the world. But how do you do a deed of ownership? Like, it seems impractical, right? It's obviously really expensive. Anyone who's ever bought a house knows that, like, the closing costs of transferring the deed and like getting getting title insurance and doing all of that work, it takes a lot of time, it takes weeks, and it costs a lot of money. So how can you provide a deed of ownership for a bottle of wine? Like, isn't that impractical? And what the blockchain does really well is, it makes it super cheap and super easy because it's done algorithmically instead of being done, and it's done on a permissionless basis instead of needing a whole bunch of people that go and do all of it. It's just done automatically on chain. And secondly, it's a global contract, right? Like real estate, or even like cars or other deeds of ownership, are really regionally controlled, right? Either by a state or a city or even a federal government. But like wine almost always moves from one country to another. So how can that deed of ownership transcend country borders? And that, again, was impossible to do before the blockchain. But now, because the blockchain is decentralized, it creates this decentralized ledger. You have the ability to have a super, super cheap transaction, super cheap algorithmic transaction. So it's very easy to create a deed of ownership for a bottle of wine. It costs a penny. And it's a global contract. It's a global deed. That deed can transcend borders. So what that does is it opens up all the same stuff that you get from your house, but on a kind of a much smaller level, right? You can insure it, you can borrow against it, you can track ownership, you can get all of that data that turns the wine industry from being kind of a prehistoric, old-fashioned industry that operates, 100% on traditions, to a business that can act like a real business. And there are going to be people that say the old traditions are great, and like it's worked for 100. This is the way it's worked for 100 years, and why can't it keep working the same way? And that's for sure true. But at the end of the day, everybody makes more money.
Barolo Wars. This is the Barolo Wars.
The Barolo Wars.
Just don't come in with an axe.
Yeah, an axe.
Barolo Wars. Okay. I mean, I get it. I hope everyone is getting this. And honestly, I really want everybody who is watching this to scroll down on our profile and take a look at the article that Dave put out on Medium. It's a really good read. And it is it is like a really good, the $1 trillion asset class, the sleeping giant that needs to be woken up. We're waking them up, guys. And like, it's a whole thing. So we've got this partnership now with Liquid Mercury. We are putting all the pieces together. We've got the digital cork, which has been, you know, live, and we've minted. How many digital corks have we minted since we started?
25,000 bottles
Okay.
worth
And
about
so,
$3 million.
yeah. And that's, I mean, we were doing those all manually. So what we did, and I'm going to go on a little tangent here about our AI, because it's time that we talk about the AI. But when we're talking about a $1 trillion asset class, there's a lot of bottles of wine that need to get tokenized, right? And so originally
3 billion bottles a year.
there we go. That's exactly how many. Exactly. That is exactly how many. So we started thinking about how are we going to make all of these digital corks? Because each digital cork represents a unique bottle of wine, right? It's not like this bottle, maybe there were 13,000 of these made and all 13,000 get the same digital deed of ownership. Of course not. Like your house, every single one is unique. And so we had to come up with a way to make that an automatic process. And so we have a fantastic engineer who built the automation process for that. And that turned into a very exciting project that has led to our Bacchus AI release. So a lot of you, we've had a lot of growth in both our X account and actually across all of our platforms and channels. But it was when we released Bacchus that people really started to kind of get excited and see where this is kind of going. So make sure that you check out Bacchus_dVIN on X. He will roast you. Tag him, ask him about wine investment insights and things like that. He's sassy, but he's awesome. And then go on Telegram, and if you want to learn more about the Barolo Wars, for example, you can ask Wine Guy on Telegram, and that is Wine Guy Bot on Telegram is the handle. You can ask him anything you want about wine, food pairing, advice, like literally any kind of wine education. He will give you full details about everything. And that's really cool. But anyways, the idea was now that we've got this automated process to create digital corks for everything. So we've got now this partnership with Liquid Mercury. Liquid Mercury is basically powering all kinds of our partner channels, partner marketplaces. So what are the plans, Dave, this year? $100 million worth of wine on chain?
$100 million worth of wine on chain. And we'll have 4 or 5 channel partners by the end of the year.
Yeah, in different places in the world. So how long before you think we've got, you know, real price transparency and price discovery in wine?
I'm hoping that, you know, I think that across the whole industry, I think it's probably years. But I think that if you just think about investment grade wine, we should be able to have a really good idea of global price transparency and global liquidity by the end of the year for at least the top couple hundred wines.
That's very cool. That is very cool. We're used to waiting way longer for a good wine to come of age. So that's pretty good if you ask me. All
So
right.
the Axe story is true.
You looked it up?
Elio Altare.
Really?
Yeah, but he didn't destroy he didn't spill any wine. He went in with a chainsaw
The
and
barrel.
cut all the old big barrels
Oh my
for his
God.
family. So his
On the
family had to
modernist
change to
side.
the small barrels. Yeah.
Whoa.
That's nuts.
That is a disruptive way of doing business.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Okay. I was picturing a lot of like spilled Nebbiolo, and I was thinking that is just real. That's real sacrilege. Wow. Okay. So there was some real sabotage involved
I
within the
love
family.
it.
Jeez. All right.
Beastie Boys.
Beastie Boys. Okay, so we are at 45 minutes past. We need to make a couple announcements. There's a really exciting thing going on right now. Dave touched on Bhutan when we were talking about climate change and why why we need to start looking at maybe new places where investment grade wine will eventually be the new investment grade wine as we know it, as we don't know it today. So talking about places like Bordeaux and Burgundy and the last 50 years of investment grade wine, well, it won't always be that way. So there's a new wine industry in Bhutan. Many of you who've been following our journey will know about that already. Bhutan is in the Himalayas. I know a lot of people nod their heads and say, yeah, I know where Bhutan is. And, most of the time you really don't. So Bhutan is in the Himalayas, a really interesting place to be making wine. And there is now ready-made wine. There's an auction going on. So 2 years ago, there was the first kind of test harvest, and last year was the first ever commercial harvest in the Himalayas from the Bhutan Wine Company. And the first bottles ever produced, Vitis vinifera was not growing in Bhutan. This is the absolute, it's maybe the last frontier in wine. So the first bottles ever to be produced, the historical first vintage of Bhutanese wines, are on auction right now with Bonhams. We are going to, the link is already in our socials. We posted a podcast episode on Friday or Saturday last week that highlights the entire project. And there's also links in there in the show notes for you to be able to go and check out that auction. We'll also put the link on X again after this live stream, so you'll be able to check it out. Bidding ends on, I think, the 24th of April. It started on the 3rd. So it is ongoing, and it is a no reserve auction for the rarest bottle of wine on earth. So any of you who are real true wine fans and collectors, this is a bottle that I can't even imagine. It belongs in the Smithsonian. So very, very, very cool auction.
Someday. It's very cool.
Yeah.
There are already some interesting bids. But go check it out. It's amazing. It's really fun.
It's very fun. And make sure you listen to that podcast episode because it's pretty cool. I know we had to cut a lot of the dragon tattoo talk out of the episode because we did go on a bit of a tangent, but I'm sure there will be some fun snippets coming out about that later.
I'm getting a dragon tattoo.
I'm getting
a dragon tattoo. I'm no fooling around.
But we've got to do it where we get the first barrel wine in the ink. Otherwise, it's not even worth doing.
I'm doing it.
With diamond eyes.
I am doing it 100%.
Yeah, me too. I just gotta figure out where. I have all these. I'm getting rid of tattoos. Like this. What is this? This has got to go. It's almost gone.
It looks like someone put out a cigarette on you.
I know. This was me. I was drunk in Tbilisi, Georgia, guys. Don't get a tattoo at 3 a.m. after you've been drinking a lot of cha-cha. That's my advice to you. This is my proof. It's almost gone. I will, however, get a Bhutanese dragon tattoo, and I will not regret or remove it. Okay. On that note, wreckedwine.com is coming soon. Marketplace for fine wine trading. Dave, you want to give a little info on that? We're still weeks out. We tested it.
It's a lot of it's really just based on the markets. So we've got a lot of fun stuff coming. There will be $1 million worth of wine on chain that you can buy with VinCoin. It's all really exciting, but right now is not a great time to launch a trading platform. I think it's hard to get attention right now. I think people are really focused on other stuff. So we're all ready. Like we've been building. We feel really good about what we've built. We can't wait to show everybody. But I think we're gonna kind of make sure that the timing is right. So keep keep an eye out. Keep your ear to the ground. We'll let you know. But right now, we're really excited. But
right now, go check out Bacchus.
Right now, check out Bacchus.
Because he's every day he's getting smarter. It's very, very, very cool.
It's sick how smart he is.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Awesome. Okay, guys. I think that's a wrap on today. Join us next week. Actually, next week it's going to be Dave. He's going to be in Portugal. I think the topic, if you've been registering for these via Luma, you will see that next week was originally Chardonnay topic. So we're going to move that because Dave is going to be in Portugal. We're going to do Douro next week. So if you've got a bottle of Douro, anything from Portugal, really, but Douro specifically, if you've got it, then show up Wednesday. I'm going to be on a plane. So unfortunately, you won't have my charm. Sorry, guys.
We won't have Jana to kick around on Wine Wednesday. That sucks.
God. But I'll be back in 2 weeks from now, and we'll have. I think we're gonna have a guest winemaker from Australia in 2 weeks. Mhm.
Cross your fingers.
Cross your fingers. All right, guys. Thank you very much, and cheers, Dave. Look. I didn't even finish my
Salute.
glass yet. Cheers. This is it. This is it. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in. The rambles.